boat prices did not just dip between 2024 and 2025. They fell off a cliff. Boats that were safe places to park money suddenly started selling for tens of thousands less than their owners owed. Dealers whispered about silent repossessions, auctions filled with late-model fiberglass, and brands that were supposed to be bulletproof quietly getting hammered. How does that even happen in just 1 or 2 seasons? Which kinds of boats took the worst hits? And which owners are now stuck watching the market from underwater? Tonight, we are pulling back the curtain on 12 specific cases, what went wrong, and what that might mean for your transom next season. Number 12, Mercury 4/115 powered boats. When people talked about safe boats, they were usually talking about safe power. For years, everyday packages powered by the Mercury 4/115 horsepower, from sun tracker pontoons to Lund utility rigs, were treated like blue-chip assets of the lake world. These were the boats lenders trusted, dealers ordered without hesitation, and owners assumed would always have a buyer. That belief drove quiet overconfidence. Through 2022 and into early 2023, dealers ordered deep, stacking pallets of engines behind the scenes under the assumption that a 115 would never sit. Reliability and brand trust made excess inventory feel invisible. Rising borrowing costs changed the math fast. Holding dozens of identical packages stopped feeling safe, and because these engines powered the most common boats on the water, saturation hit almost overnight. By late 2024, brand new outboards that once lived in the low teens were selling in the high single thousands, dragging used packages down with them. The small outboard had never been the problem. The assumptions around it had. And if even the humble, dependable backbone of the boating world could lose value this quickly, what hope did the more specialized engines have as the correction spread from lake shores toward open water? Number 11, the Yamaha 252 SD jet boats. On a lot of lakes, the status symbol quietly shifted from old ski boats to sleek jet-driven runabouts. They were the boats that drew cameras at the ramp and filled social feeds every weekend. For a while, it seemed like there would always be another buyer ready to step in at the same money. At that same moment, credit was cheap, and buyers convinced themselves that they could live with long loans because these hold value. Dealers leaned into that belief by ordering multiple identical color combinations and spec sheets. A small store that used to be happy with 1 or 2 jet boats on the lot suddenly had half a dozen in a neat row. Then traffic slowed. Gas prices made some families think twice about big weekend runs. The novelty of wake sports cooled just enough that the difference between a shiny new boat and a 2-year-old trade-in started to blur. On the wholesale side, lenders quietly signaled that they were less interested in carrying big blocks of seasonal toy inventory. To move units, some dealers took deals that would have been laughed at in 2021. That pushed used values down right alongside them. The noise around the jet boats faded quickly, like a weekend trend that burns bright and disappears. But myths linger longer, and some boats lived off mythology alone. That is why what happened to the next outboard felt almost like a campfire story gone wrong, the kind old-timers swear could never actually happen. Number 10, the Boston Whaler 230 Outrage. Some hulls carry a kind of myth around them, the feeling that they live outside normal resale rules. Owners talk about unsinkable reputations and shrug off the idea of taking a real hit. That confidence met a very different used market between 2024 and 2025. All of that history met a very different used market in the 2024 to 2025 window. The same buyers who once walked straight to the whaler section at a boat show began quietly cross-shopping more aggressively priced offshore hulls that burned less fuel and carried similar electronics. For the first time in a long time, the question was not, can I afford a whaler? It was, what else can I get for this payment? On the dealer side, a few over-optimistic orders were all it took. 1 or 2 seasons of softer offshore fishing participation, a couple of tough weather years, and now there were more 230 outrages on the market than truly committed buyers. Asking prices that had hovered in the $120,000 to $130,000 $60,000 range for clean, late models began to soften. Actual closing prices slipped into the high 90s and low hundreds, especially where lenders were eager to see inventory move off floor plan lists. For longtime whaler people, this felt almost surreal. Seeing their supposedly rock-solid center consoles used as negotiation leverage on big multi-boat package deals was something they had not prepared for. Still, if premium fiberglass was taking hits, at least the sportier runabouts would be safe. Number 9. The Chaparral 287 SSX. There is a class of big bowriders that are as much waterfront decor as they are boats. They host sunset cruises, slow laps past the fuel dock, and long days with nothing more aggressive than a gentle wake. In the boom years, paying up for that image felt almost reasonable. In an environment where waterfront buyers were pulling equity from rising real estate, that did not seem crazy for a while. Then the math shifted. Monthly payments climbed as interest rates marched up, and suddenly that dock jewelry aura became a liability. Owners who only put 50 or 60 hours a year on their SSX began quietly asking what it would fetch if they stepped down to a smaller package or out of boating altogether. Those questions landed in a market already nursing too many similar boats. When a few desperate sales cleared at surprisingly low numbers, they became new benchmarks. Subsequent buyers used those deals as ammunition, and over time, the seller who insisted that their boat was worth $170 discovered that the only serious offers lived much closer to $120 or $130,000. When image boats lost their shine, the question wasn't just about polish, it was about propulsion. The market stopped asking what a boat looked like and started asking what pushed it forward, and that brought everything back to the engines, especially the ones that had always flown under the radar. Number 8. The Suzuki DF300 twin outboard boats. You could feel it in the listings. Twin outboards, offshore capable, turnkey. 2 engines on the back made buyers imagine bigger water, safer runs, and stronger resale. Boats like a Parker pilot house or a Sea Hunt gamefish, often rigged with twin Suzuki DF300 horsepower outboards, became the sweet spot, serious enough to justify the payment, efficient enough to feel responsible. But instead of ordering just enough engines to match projected builds, some stores began stacking extra twins, just in case, confident they could always bolt them onto the next pilot house or walk around that rolled through. Distributors encouraged the habit with volume incentives. On paper, it looked smart. Reliable engines, strong word of mouth, growing demand for outboard cabins. Then the tempo changed. By late 2023, higher rates and softer usage patterns meant fewer buyers were stepping up for twin-engine cruisers in the low $200,000 bracket. Boats that had been spec'd with full electronics and twin Suzukis now sat at shows and in listings longer than anyone expected. To keep deals moving, some builders and dealers quietly cut engine margins first. The effect rippled outward. A buyer who knew someone had just purchased a package with brand new Suzuki twins at a discount was not about to pay top dollar for a lightly used set. By mid-2025, clean low-hour twin DF300s that once anchored confident resale stories were being treated as bargaining chips. And if even trusted twin outboards could lose their protective aura, the engines hanging on hardcore fishing transoms were about to face their own reckoning. Number 7. The Yamaha F300 offshore pairs. Ask around an offshore dock and you will hear the same shorthand. It's an easy sell. That phrase was never just about the hull, it was about the confidence the whole rig carried. A regulator or a contender with twin Yamaha F300 horsepower outboards didn't just look ready, it priced like it was protected, like depreciation was something that happened to other people. Dealers and builders noticed. So instead of offering a single engine option or a more modest power package, many spec sheets jumped straight to twin F300s, pushing total prices into waters that used to belong only to premium badges. Buyers went along because they believed the engines themselves would keep resale propped up, no matter what the broader market did. When rates rose and fuel costs climbed, that logic began to fray. Some crews shortened their runs, others skipped trips altogether. A few owners, staring at payments tied to tournament-level rigs they were no longer using that way, quietly asked what their twin Yamaha packages might bring on the used market. The answer was sobering. By mid-2025, clean, mid-size offshore hulls with twin F300s that once fetched prices near the $160,000 mark were instead settling much closer to the low 120s after negotiations, surveys, and small repair punch lists. The engines still started on the first turn. The reputation had not collapsed. The math had. When the offshore guys started asking quieter questions than usual, the families back at the marina felt it in their own way, a shared tightening, a moment of hesitating before turning the key. Comfort boats, long treated like living rooms with propellers, were about to feel that hesitation ripple straight through them. Number 6. The Grady-White Freedom 275. Certain dual consoles have long been treated as the safe harbor of family boating. Owners point to thick hulls, tall bows, and familiar layouts as reasons they will always be wanted. In a tighter market, even those assumptions had to be tested. The 2024 to 2025 period did not completely erase that logic, but it did put dents in it. As dual consoles multiplied across brands and buyers became more price sensitive, even a Grady had to live in the same spreadsheet as its competitors. Dealers who had ordered 1 or 2 extra Freedoms to fill display space found themselves rolling floor plan balances longer than they liked. It is very difficult to talk about legendary resale when your lender is asking pointed questions about boats that have been sitting for more than 1 full season. That pressure filtered into used pricing, where a late model Freedom 275 once brought numbers comfortably in the $180,000 zone. Real closing prices began to settle closer to $150,000, particularly in regions with several boats on the market at the same time. The drop was not as steep as some less established brands, but it was enough to surprise owners who had built their mental budgets around the old premiums. Saltwater stories only tell half the tale. Drive inland long enough past the gas stations, the farm fields, the little towns with one blinking light, and you hit lakes where boats wear a different kind of seriousness. And on those lakes, a very different kind of trouble was brewing beneath the casting decks. Number 5. The Evinrude E-TEC 300 tournament rigs. In the walleye tournament world, running an Evinrude E-TEC 300 horsepower outboard was more than a power choice. It was a statement. Anglers bragged about instant throttle response, distinctive styling, and fuel curves they knew by heart. For a while, nearly new G2-powered rigs passed from pro to aspiring pro, almost like trophies. That confidence bled into pricing. Dealers built 622 style deep V hulls and similar platforms around fully loaded Evinrude packages, stacking on high-end sonar, multiple displays, and custom trailers. Out-the-door numbers in the $130,000 to $140,000 neighborhood did not feel impossible as long as payouts, sponsorships, and trail schedules stayed healthy. Then the ecosystem cooled. By 2024, travel costs, shrinking fields, and quieter sponsor support all combined to thin demand. Anglers who once traded up every season decided to stretch their ownership another year or two. Some left the circuit entirely, listing their G2 rigs just as more boats hit the market from the last big wave of upgrades. The result was a reset. Rigs that had been financed at peak optimism began trading hands in the upper 80s to mid-90s, depending on electronics and cosmetics. For owners staring at payoff numbers written under very different assumptions, that gap was not theory. It was the cash they would need to bring to the table, to step away. Even the tournament veterans, the ones who have seen every kind of season come and go, felt a strange stillness settling over their rigs. It was the kind of quiet that makes every sound sharper, the click of a rod locker, the hum of a charger, and it followed them right back to the cabin boat crowd. Number 4. The Tohatsu BFT 250 and 300. Cabin boat packages. Cabin boats are bought with an escape plan in mind. Range matters. Shelter matters. The ability to turn a long day into an overnight without overthinking it matters most. The buyers drawn to these boats weren't chasing flash. They were chasing efficiency that still felt serious. That is where the value-driven cabin packages found their audience. On pilot house boats like a Jeannot or compact cruisers built in the cutwater mold, Tohatsu BFT 250 and 300 horsepower outboards became part of a quiet formula. Proven internals, familiar service routines, and a badge that came in just under the obvious names. It felt like doing the homework and being rewarded for it. Builders leaned into that math. Modern layouts, efficient hulls, and dependable power could be offered at prices that undercut more established competitors without looking stripped or compromised. Number 3. The Cobalt 30. Luxury bowrider. Luxury day boats occupy a strange space between performance machine and floating living room. They appeal to buyers who notice the stitching on a seat as much as they notice the wake. For a long time, that attention to detail seemed to insulate them from normal depreciation curves. In the old environment, a used Cobalt sold itself. Dock Talk handled the marketing. But by 2024, buyers who could afford such a boat were also more careful with their balance sheets. A $300,000 toy bought in a low-interest world feels very different when every line of credit in your life has become more expensive. That feeling does not show up on listings. It shows up in how long boats sit, as days on market stretched from weeks into months. Pressure built for sellers to do something. Some chose to hold firm and wait, but others had reasons to move. Relocations, changing family structures, or shifting priorities. When those sellers agreed to deals in the upper 160s or low 170s, it created a new frame. Now, any prospective buyer could point to those closing numbers and ask why they should pay more. Cobalt did not lose its craftsmanship. The ownership experience did not change overnight. What changed was the willingness of a smaller pool of buyers to pay old premiums when there were many more boats available at once. And if luxury day boats were discovering that prestige had limits, the wake boats that had defined waterfront status for years were about to learn the same lesson in their own way. Number 2. The Malibu Wakesetter 23 LSF. On many shorelines, the loudest shape on the lift is the wake boat. It is the one built around playlists, ballast tanks, and long lines behind the transom. As long as every weekend revolved around surfing, the payments felt justified. In that moment, a lot of assumptions were baked into those contracts. Parents projected years of heavy usage. Teenagers promised that this is all we do. Dealers reassured nervous buyers that wake boats were the new waterfront currency and would stay strong. It is not that they were lying. For a while, it was true. Then the cycle turned. Kids got older. Some headed off to college. Others discovered different interests. Gas bills for a long day of surfing stopped being background noise and started being real conversations. At the same time, insurance costs crept upward in certain lakes, where wake damage became a political topic. That combination meant more owners quietly pondering whether they needed that much boat, that much ballast, that much payment. The wake boats made their noise, lived loudly, and fell loudly. But every lake has a quieter shore, the spot where music fades, water flattens, and the expensive pontoons drift like floating porches. That is where the final lesson waited, patient and unhurried, until the season's bills came due, which brings us to the last one on our list. Number 1. Luxury tri-toons, powered by Honda. BF250 and BF300 outboards. These weren't impulse buys. They were statements, floating porches, sunset machines, the kind of purchase that turned a dock into a destination. On upper trim tri-toons like a Premier or a Manitou, a Honda BF250 or BF300 on the back wasn't loud or flashy. It was the quiet flex, smooth, refined, reliable enough to bet the loan on. Dealers and builders leaned into that confidence, layering the boats with vinyl flooring, underdeck lighting, and club-level sound systems. The total packages stretched well into the $140,000 to $180,000 range, but it felt justified. Buyers signed long loans with the belief that, worst case, the engine alone would hold the value. Then reality crept in. Higher interest rates bled into every corner of the household budget. Dock fees, fuel, insurance, payments that once felt manageable started feeling permanent. And just as that pressure mounted, more nearly identical tri-toons, same brands, same Honda power started showing up in listings and auctions. At auction, nostalgia doesn't matter. What mattered was clearance. Packages that once represented over $150,000 of spend were now trading hands in the $70,000 to $90,000 range. The Hondas were still quiet, still reliable, still technically excellent, but they lived in a market that no longer cared what they were supposed to be worth. For cautious buyers and bruised sellers alike, those numbers forced a colder look at everything bolted, wired, or welded onto their boating dreams. It is tempting to see these as unlucky outliers, but the truth runs deeper. For years, easy loans and hype hid how fragile boat values really are when rates climb and supply piles up. Even the strongest brands could not outrun that math. Still, boats were never just investments. They were memories waiting to happen. That part has not changed. What has is the margin for error. If you are wondering what this means for your boat, drop your question below. And if you want grounded, data-backed looks inside the boating world, hit like and subscribe. More real market truth is coming soon.